Hey everyone, I'm Nick, and this is Bits of Architecture. So in this episode of the series, we're going to be talking about high-level computer organization. So one of the principal questions we have in computer architecture is, how are computers organized? So what are the major components, and how do they interact with each other? Now classically, our computers have 5 major components, and that's going to be our control, our data path, our memory, our input, and our output. But what exactly are each of these things, and how do they interact with each other? So starting out, we have our control, and our control is really responsible for driving the execution of our programs via their instructions. So our control takes in our instructions and drives the execution in our data path, our accesses to memory, and how we interact with I/O. Now, very tightly coupled with our control is going to be our data path. And like I said, our data path is what's really responsible for executing, right, these arithmetic operations that we have as part of our program. So whether that's, calculating, the address of some piece of memory we want to access, multiplying or dividing things, that's taken care of by our data path or our execution units. Now we typically refer to our control and our data path together as our processor. And one thing that both our control and our data path rely on is going to be our next major component, which is memory. Now, our memory is our storage for our programs and our data. So at the end of the day, our programs are just a bunch of instructions, which are just bits, right? They're bits stored in memory. And likewise, all of the data that our programs use, so whether that's text or it's numbers or video or audio, all of that is just bits stored in memory. Now, our next two components are going to be our interface with the outside world, right? Our input and our output. So our input allows us to access things from the outside world through our different devices we have by storing them into our memory in our computer. And likewise, or rather on the other side of things, we have our output, which reads things from our memory and presents them to the outside world, right? Maybe on a monitor. Now, this is what a modern CPU or central processor unit looks like. So this is an AMD Renmore die that I've partially annotated here. Now our CPU typically includes our data path and our control, and is responsible for signaling and interacting with our I/O. But oftentimes it also includes part of our memory hierarchy, so things like caches as an optimization. So if we go ahead and look at our die on the left-hand side of the screen here, highlighted in yellow over here is going to be our core, and this is going to include our data path and our control. So things like our branch predictor, our fetch and our decode logic for our instructions will live in our core, as well as things like our floating point and integer execution units. Now you can see that we have a number of different cores on the CPU, so all these parts of the chip that look roughly identical to what we've highlighted in yellow. So it looks like we have 4 along the top here, and then 4 down below, so say 8 total cores. Now, very close to our cores is also this piece of memory we have over here. And this is going to be our L3 cache, right? Which we'll talk about much more in depth when we get into the memory hierarchy. And you can see we have another block of memory over here, which will also be part of this L3 cache. And we even have some memory inside of the cores themselves as part of our L1 and our L2 caches. So we have memory very close to our compute. Now on the edge of our processor dies, we tend to have our interfaces with our I/O, so things like our interfaces for PCIe and USB. So that's what I've kind of highlighted in blue here on the edge of our chip. Now, as you can definitely see, I haven't highlighted and annotated the entire chip, and there are many more components to go over. So things like memory I/O controllers and even dedicated graphics hardware. Now, I'd encourage you to go online and look at some more heavily and fully annotated pictures of dies from both CPUs and GPUs and really any chip you can find. They're quite interesting to look at. So let's go ahead and continue on, and let's talk a bit more about memory. It's important to understand the memory terminology because we're going to be using it a lot. So memory we can typically group into 2 major categories. We can group it into our non-volatile memory as well as our volatile memory. So our volatile memory is our memory that retains data only when powered, right? So things like our DRAM and our SRAM, our dynamic random access memory or our static random access memory. So this is memory where if we pull the plug on our computer, it became no longer powered, all of that data goes away. So DRAM and SRAM are both pieces of semiconductor memory, right? So they're made out of semiconductors, but they have quite a few differences. So for some fixed given area, we have much higher density for DRAM than SRAM. So we can fit a lot more DRAM cells than we can fit SRAM cells. So to store a bit of information in DRAM, it typically only takes a single capacitor and a single transistor. But for SRAM, it typically takes 6 transistors. So it's usually 2 cross-coupled inverters, so 2 inverters, and then 2 access transistors, so 6 transistors total. Now, while DRAM takes the win in terms of density compared to SRAM, SRAM is also faster than DRAM. So, it tends to be used as our on-chip memory. So if we go back to that picture of the die we had, right, our L3 cache over here and the L1 and L2 cache as part of our cores will typically be made out of SRAM. However, the sticks of memory we use with the memory modules on them, those will typically be, much larger, right, in terms of capacity, but those will be made out of DRAM. So on the other side of things, we have our non-volatile memory, and that's going to be our memory that retains the data in the absence of power. And this is really a critical thing, right? When we turn off our computer, we want our operating system to still be there and any programs or data that we've created to still, be accessible. So we have a few different forms of non-volatile memory that we should be familiar with. So we have things like our magnetic disk or our hard disk drives. So these contain, rotating platters covered in magnetic recording material that spin round and round incredibly quickly, and there's a little head that reads the data off of these spinning platters. So these tend to be fairly cheap, but they also tend to be a lot slower, right? We have physical moving parts now. And then below here we have flash memory. So this again is semiconductor memory, but it tends to be slower than our DRAM and SRAM. So we're making a design trade-off here of capacity and, being non-volatile compared to being, much faster. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue on and let's talk a little bit more about our I/O. So most people are familiar with our inputs and our outputs, right? So for inputs, we'll have things like our keyboard, our mouse, our microphone, and our webcam. And for outputs, we'll have things like our monitors and screens and our speakers. But we have some things that fall into both categories, so things that are both inputs and outputs. And networks are a great example of something that's both an input and an output. So we rely on networks for so many things today. So, networks enable us to have remote access to, resources. It also enables, great amounts of communication, right, between different devices. And, this amount of, intercommunication is what's responsible for so much of the world that we have today. Now we can group our networks into a couple categories. So we have things like our local area networks or LANs. So these are smaller scale networks that are typically, maybe the size of a building. So we do this interconnection via things like Ethernet or Wi-Fi. And then we have much wider area networks or WAN. So these are large scale networks that might span a continent. So, how we, connect things over great distances. So the giant fiber optic cables that we put underneath or inside of the ocean at the ocean floor, and connect between different continents, right? These would be more an example of these wide area networks. Okay, so that's going to be some basics around computer organization. We'll be talking a lot more about things like our data path and our control and our memory, and even our I/O, and of course in later videos as we detail more about how we implement those specific areas of computers. But that's going to go ahead and do it for this time. As always, I'm Nick, and I hope you have a nice day.